Alright, so this is Lacedaemon's talk. This is like a new thing I may do. I'm going on long drives. Currently, I'm driving down to Poughkeepsie so I can take a train to New York City for the day. As of me recording this, obviously, it won't be that when I post it up on YouTube. If I do ever post this on YouTube, but anyway, if you're hearing this, I posted it on YouTube. So anyway, I'm gonna take a little bit of a time break from my music to talk about some stuff I've been thinking about recently. Because currently, it's July 5th, 2025, which is the time recording this. So yesterday was the 249th birthday of the United States, obviously 1776. After a little over a year of fighting between the colonists and the British, the Americans declared their independence from the British, and they cited numerous grievances against King George III, 27 to be exact. Now, if you read those grievances, it may seem a little familiar to you, and that's because Donald Trump, the current president of the U.S. at the time of this recording, unfortunately, he's violated at least half of these grievances at this point. And it's just, it really makes you wonder. It makes me think, obviously. Probably makes you think if you're listening to this, if you follow my channel, my politics and whatnot. And Donald Trump has already violated at least half of the grievances that we laid out against, George III, when we declared our independence. And yet, it feels like not many people are talking about this. The people that are cheering the loudest on this day. Also, at least some of the people are cheering the loudest on this day are the ones who cheer for Trump, despite the fact that he's violating all these grievances. They're the reason why July 4th exists in the first place. It's absolutely insane to me. I don't understand, and I'll never understand the cognitive dissonance that's required to consider yourself both an American patriot and a Trump supporter, because in my eyes, you cannot be both. You cannot be both, no matter what a Trump supporter says, or no matter what someone on the far left, like a tanky, may say. All right, you cannot be a patriot and a Trump supporter, in my opinion. At least at this point, you definitely cannot. Given everything that's come out about Donald Trump, ever since his first term started, or actually ever since he first ran in 2015, about over a decade ago at this point. But I generally cannot understand how you can be a patriot, a pro-American and a Trump supporter, because in my eyes you cannot be. You absolutely cannot be. Donald Trump represents everything wrong with the U.S. Absolutely everything wrong with the U.S. He's hijacked our country. All right. In his second term is gonna deal some damage. I know, in my opinion, I'm not a doomer. Okay, fuck the doomers. All right, I'm not a doomer. Okay. The damage I don't think will be permanent. And the reason I don't think it'll be permanent is because you take a look at other countries that have had similar issues, and they've risen from the ashes to become something better than they were before. Take a look at Germany, for example. Obviously, Germany went through World War I. When it became Nazi Germany, it was utterly annihilated at the end of World War II. And yet, just 20 years later, the German economic miracle began, and Germany became one of the most powerful countries in continental Europe. Most powerful countries in continental Europe. And to this day, the German economy is still in the top 5, I believe. If it's not, I think it's like 6, which is still pretty good. Germany rose from the ashes to become an economic powerhouse. Japan rose from the ashes to become an economic powerhouse. Japan was fucking nuked twice by us, and plus firebombed to hell and back by us. And yet Japan grew to become the second largest economy at one point. I think they're the third or fourth now, they fell down to the third or fourth now because of China growing and whatnot, which is still really good, So in my view, if Germany and Japan can both come back from the clutches of fascism and the destruction of war, then I do not see how America will never be able to come back in some capacity. Of course, that does require us to mobilize and to make sure that we win in 2026 and 2028, no matter how much Trump and MAGA might try to fuck the elections. They can't stop us all. They cannot stop us all. a lot of these doomers, these doomers on the left, saying we're never gonna have another election, we're never gonna have another fair election. Here's the thing. So in the U.S., elections are not run by the federal government; they're run by the states, for better and for worse. Now, I've laid out problems of that in the past, like the voter ID laws and whatnot that some of these stupid states pass. But in this case, I never thought I'd say this, but in this case, it is a fucking blessing at the individual states run the elections in their states and the territories, but they don't really count for presidential elections now, obviously, except in the primaries. But the territories also think they run their own elections too for their own internal territorial government elections. Obviously, like Puerto Rico, I think runs their own elections. But anyway, going back to the states, the 50 states, and DC, I think DC runs their own elections too. So yeah. So, in this case, thank fucking God the states run their own elections, and DC, and the territories, because in this case, having each state and territory in DC run their own elections, that actually makes it a lot harder. It makes it a lot harder for Trump and MAGA Republicans within control of the government right now. It makes it a lot harder for them to replicate election, because the thing is they're not trying to rat fuck one election. No, they're trying to rat fuck 50 plus elections, and obviously not every state is controlled by Republicans. New York State is not controlled by Republicans. We're not controlled by Republicans. Obviously, many of the big states aren't controlled by Republicans, so it's going to be significantly harder for them to try and mess with it and interfere in these in our elections, just because of how decentralized they are. Like I said, normally I'm a guy who didn't really care for that, too much. But in this case, again, I never thought I'd say this, but thank God our elections are not centralized this time around. So that is why, in my opinion, that alone is why, in my opinion, I believe that 2026 and 2028 are going to be viable elections. We are going to have elections. There may be some problems. All right, there may be some problems, but we need to mobilize. If we mobilize in big numbers, we need to make 2020. We need to make 2020 look like a fucking joke compared to how 2028 and 2026 are going to be. All right. 2024 actually saw a decrease in voter participation by like 2 or 3%, which is disappointing. 2020, we got people out there, and we won in 2020. We kicked Trump's ass in 2020. Unfortunately, we lost in 2024. There were a couple reasons, a couple problems. Obviously, Israel and Palestine was a big reason. A lot of people stayed home. Obviously, that was a big thing. And obviously the shift between Biden and Harris late in the campaign was a big thing. All right. Look, I'll admit, originally I was a guy who wanted Biden to stay in, but then Harris came along, and now I realize that Harris probably should have come along a little bit earlier. Because honestly, the 100 something days where Harris was the nominee, that was pretty good actually. For a campaign that had to start super late in the game, honestly, I think Kamala Harris and Tim Walz did a pretty good fucking job. They did a pretty good job, if you ask me. And I feel like if they had a little bit more time, we'd be talking about President Harris right now and not President Trump for his second term. Now look, I don't hate Biden. I like Biden. I liked Biden. I mean, I had some problems with him, all right? I had some problems with him in regards to his Israel. Some problems regarding his Israel and Palestine policy. That was an issue. But at the same time, it was nice having a fucking adult in the White House and not a petulant man-child. It was nice having someone who had at least some empathy. And it was nice to have somebody who did what he believed was best for all Americans and not just best for himself. I fucking miss that so much. And it's only been it's been a little under 7 months since Trump became president again. I already miss that so much. I miss it so much. All right. And I knew that if Harris won in 2024, we're gonna get more of that. All right. So, fuck, where was I at again? I got lost in my little rant there. You're gonna hear that a lot in this Lock of Diamonds talk series. All right. You're gonna hear that a lot in this little series of videos of mine where I go on a long drive and talk for a bit. Yeah, so speaking of series, Lacedaemon's Corner, obviously, I'll be streaming that at some point next week at some point. I'm not sure when or what day, but I'll be doing some streams throughout the next few weeks. And, yeah. So anyway, so moving on to other news, obviously, speaking of Trump, unfortunately, fortunately in this case, Zohran Mamdani won the New York City primary, thank God. But now, on the bad news, quite a few Republicans, pretty much all MAGA Republicans, are now calling for Mamdani to be deported, which is fucking insane. All right, so look. No, I'm not a communist. Hell, I'm not even a socialist. All right, you're never gonna hear me call myself a socialist. You're never gonna fucking hear me call myself a communist. I do not like communism. Okay, I've seen how communism works in practice. I don't like it. Now, that said, obviously Republicans like to throw that word around a little too much. Mamdani is a little bit more to the left than I am. We have some disagreements on some things, but I still supported him because he was the best shot at keeping Andrew Cuomo out of Gracie Mansion. I believe that's the name of New York City's mayoral household. I think, actually, I read years ago that it's the only official mayoral residence in the U.S. I'm not sure if that's true or not, but I know if it's not the only one, it's one of the very few. But anyway, Mamdani represents the best shot at keeping Andrew Cuomo and Eric Adams out of Gracie Mansion. Now Curtis Silva. Now look, he's a Republican. I wouldn't vote for him, but like, if Republicans were more like Curtis Silva, I'd be a little more tempted. Curtis Silva, he has some more right-wing views of some stuff, but he's very odd compared to most Republicans. Now, when it comes to queer Americans and LGBTQ rights, the bar is all the way at the bottom of hell. All right, but Curtis Silva is actually pretty decent when it comes to the rights of LGBTQ Americans. He actually officiated he officiated one of the first same-sex weddings in New York City. All right, and he actually said on his campaign page that he will respect the rights of LGBTQ Americans. Now, I'm not sure if I can trust that, but the fact he said it alone that automatically puts him much higher than like any other Republican, honestly. Now, the funny thing is, when Curtis Silva tweeted that, a lot of conservative Republicans got really, really, really mad at him, not understanding how New York City politics works. A lot of Republicans in New York City are far more liberal than a lot of Republicans outside New York City. A lot of people complaining don't even live in the city, and they're saying, "Oh, New York City doesn't have any true Republicans." I mean, first of all, there are true Republicans. There are like more conservative Republicans in New York City. There is anywhere, obviously, but Curtis Silva represents most Republicans in New York City are like. They're a bit more liberal than most Republicans throughout the rest of the U.S., and they're much more liberal than MAGA, obviously. And Curtis Silva himself actually came out and actually denounced calls to deport Mamdani. He's saying, Mamdani's race, religion doesn't matter. Silva's problem is that, unfortunately, Silva did call Mamdani a communist, but he did at least say that Mamdani should not be deported, and that Mamdani's race and religion don't matter in this race, which is good to hear. We unfortunately, a lot of Republicans, that does matter to them. Unfortunately, we had I think that fucking asshole from Toilet Paper USA, Charlie Kirk, or Turning Point USA, I meant to call him Toilet Paper USA. That fucking asshole Charlie Kirk claimed that 24 years after 9/11, New York City may elect a Muslim as their mayor. They deserve everything they get. It's like, okay, first off, fuck your Islamophobia, okay? Just fuck off with that shit. All right, fuck right off with that shit. All right. Mamdani is not a terrorist. He's not a communist. He describes himself as a democratic socialist. He would never describe himself, at least these days, as a communist. In the past, when he was a bit younger, he may have done that, but he's older now. He's more mature. He realizes the stakes that are in play right here. And the weird thing is, people keep dragging up these older tweets by Mamdani. All right, saying, "Oh, he's definitely a communist. He hates America, whatnot." First off, those are really, really old tweets. Mamdani's 33. All right, he's been on Twitter for a very long time. He's tweeted some stuff he tweets some stuff back in the past that he probably doesn't agree with anymore. I have. I've said some stuff I probably don't agree with anymore in the past, and yet and to hold that against me now would be wrong because I don't believe in it anymore. So what? So why are Republicans? So why are Republicans and even Democrats, unfortunately, doing this shit? Well, for Republicans, it's probably the racism, and the Islamophobia, whatnot, and the fact they want them deported just because they disagree with them politically. Democrats, a little bit, not all Democrats. Some Democrats, a little bit of racism there. Now, speaking of Democrats, that's like, I was gonna say again. So I've noticed that it feels like some of the older Democrats are actually stepping aside, letting Mamdani run, and actually giving a little bit of support to him. Like Chuck Schumer apparently called Mamdani and congratulated him for winning the primary, which is good. Look, I don't like Chuck Schumer, given what's been happening and he really betrayed me. He really betrayed our trust, and he's really disappointed me. But if Schumer can give at least some support to Mamdani, there is no fucking excuse for other Democrats to not give their support to Mamdani during this race. There's too much at stake. There's too much at stake in this New York City mayoral election for us to not back Mamdani. All right? We cannot allow Eric Adams or Andrew Cuomo to be in Gracie Mansion because they are not it for the moment. Eric Adams is pretty much bought and paid for by Trump at this point. I hate to say it. And Andrew Cuomo doesn't like Trump, all right? I mean, I have a lot of problems with Andrew Cuomo, but I will say he doesn't like Trump, and he's willing to stand up to him. But I fear that Andrew Cuomo just doesn't have the energy that's needed. Mamdani, however, does, and Mamdani has the backing of many different kinds of New Yorkers, and he has the backing of young people in the city, which is important. I feel like. Shit, hang on. Sorry, there was a car I was trying to turn in. Just go around here. Alright, so I'm back. I just had to turn off a timer on my phone. Anyway, so I feel like Mamdani's win and how he's energized the young people in New York City should be a wake-up call for Democrats. Now, I'm not saying everyone has to be as left-wing as Mamdani. I'm not saying that. I'm not as left-wing as Mamdani. A lot of people are as left-wing as Mamdani. But, I feel like it's a wake-up call in the campaigning sense, because Mamdani pulled off an incredible fucking campaign. He used social media, he used tons of volunteers to go and knock on people's doors throughout New York City. And it worked. Apparently, he knocked on 1 million doors in New York City. 1 million fucking doors in New York City that Mamdani's crew knocked on. And it paid off. Mamdani kicked Cuomo's ass in the fucking primaries. I remember the Lacedaemon's Corner episode 10, I think, the election special, where I was watching it. I was thinking that either Cuomo was going to win in the 8th round or Mamdani's going to win the 8th round. Mamdani won in the fucking 3rd or 2nd round. The 3rd or 2nd fucking round. That is incredible. No one was expecting that. No, everyone was expecting that this election was going to take at least a week to confirm. But as I saw the results come in, I saw Mamdani's vote, and I saw Lander's vote. Brad Lander, who was the guy. Brad Lander is a guy I probably would have voted for if I lived in New York City first, or I ranked him first and Mamdani second. But as soon as I saw Mamdani and Lander's votes combined, I realized that Cuomo just did not have a path forward at all. Because Mamdani was around 42 or 43%. Lander was around 11%, and that's well above the 50% I think he would have needed to win the election. And the crazy thing is, even if it hadn't been ranked choice voting, it had been just first past the post, which I think is terrible. But let's say if it had just been first past the post like other elections, Mamdani still would have won. Mamdani still won a majority of still won a plurality of the vote, which is insane. Mamdani would have won even if it was a first past the post election. That's crazy. At least I think it is. If I am wrong, God help me, because I just fucking embarrassed myself if I got that wrong. But even if I got that wrong, the point is Mamdani massively overperformed in a good way, and he won. That should be a wake-up call to Democrats. Maybe not even just adopt Mamdani's more left-wing policies, but to use the tactics that Mamdani used in his campaigning. Use social media. Use social media. Get people out there. Get young people involved, and we can pull this off in 2026 and 2028. Because after Trump signed that fucking big beautiful bill, or a big ass ugly bill that he fucking signed yesterday, spitting in the face of everything this country was built on 249 years ago. It spit in the face of every single thing this country was built on 249 years ago. Ever since he signed that, we have to work hard. We have to work hard so we can win in 2026 and we can win in 2028. Because that's the only thing that will save this country. Our country, all right? And we need to save this country because this is our home. This is the United States of America, all right? And I said earlier, when I was talking to myself at one point, I was thinking about what to say. This is not a matter of left wing versus right wing anymore. This is a matter of right versus wrong. Donald Trump is wrong. MAGA is wrong. And I hate to say this point, but the Republican Party as a whole is wrong. And this country is going on a path that it cannot follow. But I believe that we will persevere in 2026 and 2028. If we carry this energy that we got in 2025 in the Mamdani race and the races that are going to come up in November, we will win. We will win next year in 2027 during those elections and in 2028. We will kick Republican ass if we keep this energy up. And a lot of Democrats are waking up to that. And I'm glad they are. I'm very glad they are. So, yeah, that's what I got for this episode of Lock of Diamonds Talk. I may record another one on this drive down, possibly, going over a different topic. But, yeah, this is it for episode 1 of Lock of Diamonds Talk. Thank you for tuning in. And remember, just have a good day, and happy 4th of July. And just remember the values this country was founded on, which are liberty, equality, freedom, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I said liberty twice, fuck. Anyway, remember the values this country was on, and remember your oath to the Constitution. Thank you.